Hello there, I'm Kios the Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Ronin Reviews. And on this episode, we're going to discuss Dune Part 2. Lisan al-Gaib! Lisan al-Gaib! Lisan al-Gaib! Moadib. So, I saw Dune Part 2. Now, if you haven't seen Dune Part 1, which I'm sure many people have, I highly recommend you check it out. I think it's on Max. It might even be on Netflix. But I'll say to do a little review on Part 1. I loved Part 1. I thought it's gorgeous. It's beautifully shot. I saw Part 1 right before I went to see Dune Part 2. It flows really well, and you can really feel the energy. You can feel the threat. You can feel the hopelessness. You can feel the hope. You can feel the journey. That's one thing I really, really enjoy about Dune Part 1 is you can feel as if you are young Paul Atreides. That's something I really enjoyed. You can feel as if you are Leto. You can feel as if you are his mother, the Bene Gesserits. Even when it comes to Duncan or Stilgar, you can feel you can feel the characters. You can resonate with them. I feel like within Dune Part 1, it sets up the world so beautifully and so eloquently and with really good flow that everything transitions well. And you as the viewer, you're able to go along with this ride and feel as if you are a part of this world, a part of this universe. That's one thing I really loved about Dune Part 1 was the level of emotional feeling from the action, from the sequences, from the dialogue, from the scenery. And this is coming from someone who, and I'm going to talk more about it in Part 2. This is coming from someone whose first experience into the Dune universe is from the Sci-Fi Channel movie miniseries that they did in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then again in the mid 2000s. I don't remember, I didn't watch Children of Dune, but the first one I did watch. And for me personally, say what you will, but I love it. It still holds dear into my heart. And when I was reflecting on watching the sci-fi miniseries and watching Villeneuve's film, I'm realizing, oh, okay, well, they really, it seems like the sci-fi series and this and the film series must be really sticking true to the books, because there were a lot of scenes in the sci-fi series and in Dune Part 1 that parallel almost beat for beat a lot of what you see, I would speculate, in the books. I myself have not read the books. I do plan on reading the books because things I've learned about the books, it seems like it gets pretty kinky, and I'm well interested in that kind of stuff. Not in that kind of kinkiness, but in sci-fi kinkiness. It deals with a lot of really interesting concepts and ideas, and fascinating character creations that I would love to delve into and reflect on. But to wrap it up on Dune Part 1, I would say that it really is a strong, phenomenal film, and it made me that much more excited for Dune Part 2. Now, let's get into Dune Part 2. Lisan al-Gaib. I love saying that. I love saying that. All right. To kind of piggyback off of what I was saying about Dune Part One, Dune Part Two. Well, I'll hold off on that. But Dune Part Two, I'll be honest, I left that theater wanting more. For a movie that was nearly 3 hours long, I felt like it needed to be longer. And I've been trying to figure out exactly where is it for me that I'm like in this weird middle ground of where like I felt like it was too short, but then at the exact same time I felt like it was too long. But I feel like, and I guess this is, and honestly, this is something I lightly heard someone say when they were reviewing, um, when they were talking about Dune. I didn't want to like get into spoilers, so I briefly heard them say this, and I was like, huh. And he mentioned how he even what's funny about it is he talked about the sci-fi Dune miniseries, and he implied that he felt like those did a better time of fleshing out certain ideas and concepts that the film didn't take enough time to do. And I'll be honest with him, I think he's actually kind of right. Um, like I said, I will admit that Dune Part Two is beautiful. It's a phenomenal film. It's beautifully shot. I mean, there are moments in the film where you feel like you're there. I did see this in IMAX, and my one issue, and I don't know if any other people experience this, but let me know down in the comments. And while you're at it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I had difficulty hearing the dialogue. I don't know if that was because of the bass in the theater, or maybe the at times the soundtrack was kind of overshadowing the dialogue. So I feel like there are moments where I miss key story beats, or just certain important little tidbits of information because I couldn't really hear them. So that was one thing that I will admit was a bit frustrating for me. I don't know if it was just that the sound system at the theater that I went to just isn't up to date, or what it might be. I don't know, but that was one of my biggest issues. Um, but what I really liked was that the part two starts off right where part one ended. So you get a nice solid kind of transition. The only issue with this transition is that they don't really do. They kind of do a good job, but they don't do a well enough job in giving you the timeline of Paul's transition from Paul Atreides to Muad'Dib Usul, I believe it was. Um, so there are times where, like, because and spoilers, we're gonna be getting into spoilers at this point, essentially. It, so if you're haven't seen it still, I highly recommend. Wait till it comes out. If you're not that interested, please continue following. But anyways, the issue that I had was that the him becoming ingratiating in with the Freeman. It was good, but I felt like we were also missing things. So one thing that I was hoping that we'd get more of is his conversations and visions with Jameis, because I didn't realize it in part one, but in part two, you get this impression that when the spice starts speaking to him, when the Dune starts speaking to him, they kind of manifest in Jameis, and Jameis has been guiding him and teaching him the ways of the Freeman. And I feel like we really should have gotten more visions and conversations of Paul with Jameis, having these visions and kind of learning about um, the Freeman, and almost in a sense, kind of getting knowledge that he was already given, but they were going to teach him anyways, and kind of elevates this level of mystery and etherealness to him. I think that would have done a really, really good job of adding that ethereal energy and atmosphere around him, because I know that they are trying to do that, but they just didn't do, for me personally, they didn't do a good enough job of exploring and explaining how ethereal Muad'Dib really is. Leon, Lisan al Gaib. So I really was hoping that we would get more of that. Um, in the sci-fi series, there you get the visions and things like that, but like there is a clear, drastic change in Paul, and you really slowly see that change into the point where like he's almost ethereal and as a prophet, the way he speaks, his mannerisms, the way he walks. And I feel that in Dylan Mulvaney's films, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name, he kind of rushed through that, and he spent more time, which is fine, on Paul's mother and the child within her, and drinking the water of life, because you see her get the blue eyes, but you don't learn about how Paul gets his blue eyes, and I that really was confusing for me, because I'm watching it and I'm like, oh wait, he has the blue eyes. I'm like, wait a minute, when did that happen? Because in the sci-fi series, when they go to the northern conclave, and they drink the water of life in the sci-fi series, which I think is the way they did it was really, really effing cool. Was they had the pool with the worms, but they were they were just in sand, um, and then they would fill these sand pools with water, and then you would have the caretakers, the monks. They would catch the worms, and then the worms would vomit out this water, and Paul and his mother were to drink that, and that's how they got the Freeman eyes. So I was hoping that we would, we see how his mother becomes a Freeman, but we don't really get to see how he becomes a Freeman. And I guess the way Dennis was doing it was, instead of showing that for Paul, he was gonna have Paul ride the grandfather worm, and that way kind of solidifying him as a Freeman, which works. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that works, but I just feel like we should have had more scenes of him struggling, well, not necessarily struggling, but him learning more and learning more about the culture. In the sci-fi series, they kind of do, I feel like a better job of allowing you to feel ingratiated into the Freeman culture. And in this one, it's kind of almost like a shock and awe into the ingratiation of the Freeman culture, which is nothing wrong. I know, you only have a certain amount of time to do things in these types of films, but I don't know why, but I just feel like the sci-fi series does a little bit better of a job of fleshing those aspects out. Just my personal opinion. I could be totally wrong. Um, but regardless of that, I really enjoyed, seeing his transition into becoming a Freeman. I would have liked to have seen more of that. I think, seeing more fight scenes of him kind of showing his fighting prowess was good. The scene with the Sandcrawler and the Harnikin was good, but I just wanted to see more fight scenes. Like, I wanted to see more physical blade fighting, and that's just me personally, because I like that hand-to-hand combat fighting, and I love the weapon designs in the world of Dune. I love how the rocket launcher is this tiny little the the ammo is this tiny little box. She fires it, Chani, and the classic, it digs through the shield and then penetrates the copter, and I love that. I think the ingenuity in the designing of the weapons, of the outfits, of the sets are phenomenal. Like it's absolutely phenomenal, and the way that they use actual um, landscapes to really invest in creating this world. I forgot where he went for Ethiopia, maybe. I'm not sure. I can't remember where. But it just it was really beautifully shot in those scenes, and then kind of like then transferring over to the Harkonnen and dealing with the Baron and his family, it was really good. That's one thing that the sci-fi series lightly touches on is the culture of the Harkonnen, but they don't really delve too deep into it. But I really loved how they really took time to flesh out the Harkonnens, their culture, the way they think, the way they act, the way they feel. I thought all of those scenes, the way the young prince and him fighting the last warriors of House Atreides, I found that to be really beautifully shot and very just creepy and depressing. Um, the whole world of Harkonnen is a world that just seems so ingratiated in death and in the void. Um, Even their fireworks are just like scream void and death. You know, you'd almost be you wouldn't be wrong to call the Harkonnen Slanesh from Warhammer 40K. But I really do enjoy those scenes. I thought it was really great. Um, and seeing how he takes power over Arachnid and just of Dune and just kind of just manhandles. I really enjoyed him as a villain. I think it would have been better if we had more time with him. Um, but I understand, the pacing. They were trying to get to a certain point, and I think that's one of the biggest issues is the pacing. Is there are moments where I feel like they linger on certain things a little too long, but they don't take enough time fleshing out other aspects. So it's kind of like the scene with, and this is a spoiler, but when Paul finds out that he is a Harkonnen, um, and that part needed more time to be fleshed out, and for the audience to kind of be more understanding of it, because it's a little confusing because they don't really take enough time to explain it. Um, so I feel like they were, by like the second act, you can kind of tell he's trying to get to the third. He's trying to get there, and he's trying to do it in a very respectful manner to the lore and to the story. And he does a good job, but at the same time, that's one of the biggest issues with the third act for me personally is that it's kind of rushed. It feels so rushed. Um, the big battle with the Freeman and the Sardaukar, it doesn't feel like a real intense, like we are fighting for our freedom. We are fighting for our identity. We are fighting for Lisan Al Gaib. Like it doesn't feel that way. It feels like bang, bang, boom. Okay, whoa, 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 whoa. And that was an issue for me. Like one thing that was great about the sci-fi version is that epic battle of Moadib and the Freemen, attacking the capital, is that it felt like a drawn out battle. It felt like the stakes were high. Like you were watching Stilgard fight. You were watching our various heroes battle, and seeing them overcome. And that was one thing that I wish that they did more of in the final act. And even with Stilgard, like I love that character, and in the sci-fi series, you kind of get more of him. You see more of him, and you get to see him really fighting and showing his prowess. Same with Chani. I felt like, as much as I think Zendaya's, a competent actress and she's good, I think she was the weakest link in this film. I just I didn't which is funny to me because the actress in Chani in the sci-fi series, she's dope. Like she's cool. Like she's this strong female character who still exudes this enormous amount of femininity. Um, and she does it in such an incredible way. And I feel like Zendaya was kind of lacking in this, in that, like, she was lacking in the femininity. Um, and I don't know if that was part of like the direction. I don't know if it's like, um, I don't know if it's like she doesn't have those kind of feminine features. She kind of looks more like a tomboy. I'll be honest with you. I feel like you know how female tomboys look, and she's pretty much a twig. So there's not much of an eccentric figure there. I think that could have been beneficial for them, is maybe a female actress with more of a feminine look that still exudes like this badass warrior. And I think Zendaya did a good job of exuding the badass warrior, but not enough of the feminine side of that warrior. And listen, this is also coming from someone who didn't read the books, so I could be completely wrong. So don't get on my butt too badly about it. All right, pause. But anyways, the whole point that I'm trying to make is that, um, in terms of kind of like getting through the third act, I just feel like we needed a stronger. This Zendaya needed to be a little bit stronger. I don't know if he. I think because he focused so much on Paul and his mom and Harkonnen and really fleshing them out, and like he kind of did not do enough with Zendaya's character Chani, which in the sci-fi series she has a more prominent kind of role, and you can feel her more. That's just me personally, all right. And so for me, like the third act, it just was lacking the stakes. It didn't feel like Paul was really fighting for his house, fighting to reclaim his identity. And even with the emperor and it just felt rushed. The ending felt rushed. Um, it felt like we should have at least had one house. I feel like what would have helped is if like the survivors of House Atreides that were able to get off world, if they returned with a fleet and they helped Paul, get the Freeman off. It just, there are certain things near the end where I just felt like it was rushed, and you're just trying to get to a certain point, and you got there. But for me, it leaves me wanting more in terms of, well, we should have gotten more fleshed out before we got to this major event. That's just kind of how I felt about the way the third act of the film went. I just think it was rushed, and we needed more time to feel. And maybe and that's the thing that it's kind of lacking in from the first one, is that feel. And that's just me. I resonated and I felt with the characters, but not as much as I did in part one. And I think a lot of that is that he was really moving through different story points and different arcs of these characters, but we didn't really get enough time to feel the impact of them coming to these certain milestones or setbacks. And we didn't get enough time to really delve into that. I love with what they did with his sister. I don't know if it's similar in the novels, but in the sci-fi miniseries, she was already born, and she was already out and about. So when they come to the big battle for Dune, she's already at the capital. Like she's already been causing issues. And oh God, what else was it? And at that point, in the sci-fi series, Paul had already had a child with Chani, but that child was murdered. Um, so I don't know if that also happened in the books. I'm speculating that it probably did. So and also in the sci-fi series, he's much older. Like, because in the sci-fi series, like, by the time he goes and takes back Dune, his sister is like, I don't know, like 10, 11 years old, somewhere around there. So I don't know if that's how it is in the books. Um, but I thought we were gonna meet his sister, like physically meet her, but like we meet her through the mother's womb, and that one dream that Paul has where he's speaking with his sister. So I do love how the way they did the sister and how she was able to speak in the womb. Like, she's still this little egg, yet she's having full conscious thoughts and she's fully aware of her surroundings. Like, I love that stuff. I thought that was really well done. I just think those aspects, the spiritual, esoteric aspects, were kind of pushed to the side for more splendor. And I don't really like that. I think they should have, just like in the first one, they should have went balls deep into the esoteric and really played off of that. And I think because he pulled back from the esoteric, it kind of was missing that atmosphere. It was missing a little bit. Um, and I use this in term in like in making music. It didn't fit the pocket. It was missing a bit of foundation, and I think the bit of the foundation that it was missing was the esoteric aspects of it. It was there, but there wasn't enough of it to really sit and feel the esoteric energy, to really sit and feel the message. And like I said, I don't know what was going on with the audio. I don't know if other people had that similar experience as I did. But that was one issue that I had. And also, like, they really flew through certain story beats, and that was the problem. Is because they're flying through these story beats, you don't get enough time to really you don't really get enough time to really sit in those moments. And that's what was really great about Dune 1 was in those certain high point moments, you're able to kind of sit and feel it. You're able to really experience it. Whether it's the fall of House Atreides, or when Leto is about to um, commit suicide, or I should say exit stage left. I apologize. You have that going on in the film, so trying to kill Baron Harkonnen, and that's great. That scene was impactful. The scene where Paul begins to have the visions inside the tent, you can sit and feel that. They took time to let you feel the atmosphere of those moments. And I feel like even when he goes to the Freeman Council and all the Freemen are there in attendance, that felt very rushed. It was incredible. It was beautiful, but it felt rushed. I didn't feel the energy as much as I should have felt it. I didn't feel that as much. And I think that was, for me, one of the issues that was going on was the esoteric spiritual aspects were dialed back a lot. So much so that for me, it took away from my experience of the film a bit. And even when it got the political stuff, we didn't really get enough chance to really digest the political implications and what it really means. They didn't really take time to kind of flesh out how is Paul a Harkonnen. What does that mean for the larger story? They kind of rush through these certain beats, which I understand he's trying to move in a certain point, but it's like, bro, like if you're gonna go all the way, go all the way. Don't hold back. And that's my problem that I have, is that he held back on those elements. And I think he held back because he probably felt that like people weren't resonating with the film as much because of those elements. And I'm like, yo, screw them. Please go balls to the walls with the esoteric. Go in that. Let us feel that energy, that atmosphere. And I feel that is what was lacking, and the third act kind of being rushed. And we were lingering on certain aspects in the in the first act a little too much, and we should have been more. There wasn't as much of a flow. There were these kind of like rips in the flow, and you kind of had to get your balance back and get your footing back into it. So that's kind of how I felt about Dune Part 2. I think that, if Dune Part 3 comes out, I really hope that he really delves into and really just allows the esoteric part to come out. Because if you're going to have the third one called Messiah, I expect a Messiah. Okay? I don't want a half-assed Messiah, and I don't want a watered-down Messiah. I want a full-fledged, balls-to-the-wall Messiah. And that concludes this episode of Ronin Review, Dune Part 2. If you enjoyed this episode and you've enjoyed the film, please make sure to leave a comment with your thoughts and any speculations on future films or anything, any recommendations on sci-fi books or even films you'd like me to cover and review, because I might get into reviewing some sci-fi books as well. But anywho, please make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. And I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love. Lisan al-Gaib. Lisan al-Gaib.